Jim Morrison,
Here.
Dan Orsby's here, and Mark Eastman is absent. So number 3 on the list is discontinued roads discussion and review. I'd like to move that one to the 25th, the meeting of the August 25th. Do we have to have a motion for that? No. All right. Number 4, so Chapter 6 licensing changes for marijuana. Luke.
So it's not really so much changes as it is we don't have any right now. So so these are created from scratch. So we've approved marijuana establishments. So now we have to have some type of regulation as to how we approve people having that use. So that's what these are. I don't know if you want me to read down through them or if you've read them. Have you reviewed them?
Yes.
Yeah, I read them.
Yeah.
Were there questions or concerns about any of these?
No.
No?
Not for me anyway.
Jim, have you had a chance to review these?
No.
No?
I'm pretty aware of what, what's going on,
Okay. I mean, most of it's pretty common sense stuff. We discussed at great length whether we wanted to have background checks by the police department being part of the licensing procedure. And after a lot of debate, we decided to take that part out because the state does the background checks in order to give them the state license. And if we also did that, then we would have to set criteria for what standards we were looking for, what would be a disqualifying factor, I guess is the best way of saying it. And there's just so many possibilities that it seemed best to just leave it in the state's hands. That being said, we do have the stuff in there about if they've been convicted or pled guilty, or if they've been declared by the court to be a nuisance in the past, or if they've been subject to an order of closure at another facility. Those were all things that would stop it from happening. If there's no questions about that, then the other changes we made were we've been making a concerted effort to take all the fees out of the ordinances and put them all in the fee schedule. And all of these fees that are listed here already are in the fee schedule. So all this is with strike through is just taking them out of this ordinance so that they're only in one place. And then the last thing is just a definition for what a marijuana establishment is. Any questions or comments on any of that?
I'm good with it myself. All right, I think we're good. Thank you.
Next item.
What's that? Oh, the fee schedule updates. All right, next one. Luke.
So, I can't swear to it, but from what I've seen, looking at old permits and stuff, I don't believe our building permit fees have changed since the early 90s. And I'm not looking to set huge whopping fees and gouge people, but at the same time, our fees are lower than every town around, including Portland and Verona. Significantly cheaper. So, and then towns like Brewer and Holden and Belfast are significantly higher than what I'm proposing. or what I'm proposing is to increase our square footage fee from 10 cents a square foot to 20 cents a square foot. And our unfinished or accessory structures, which would be garages, decks, whatnot, from 5 cents a square foot to 10 cents a square foot. That would put us about the same as most surrounding towns, small towns like Surrey and Orland. We'd still be lower than Verona. Verona's 25 cents a square foot. I guess before I go any further, is there any discussion on that?
What benefit do we really get for making these fees higher?
Well, you have to pay me, and you have to pay for my training, and all that stuff is getting higher. Mileage rates are going up because gas has gone up. And with the new energy code, I'm having to do more inspections because now I have to inspect the insulation. I have to inspect the windows and doors. I have to do final inspections with door tests and all that fun stuff. So with all these extra inspections, that's more trips, more mileage, more work, and so most people, especially the ones from away, when I issue a building permit, they're like, that's it. They're shocked at how low it is. And like I said, I'm not out to gouge people, but I think it is time for a small bump. But that's where I'm coming from. But obviously, you guys have the final say.
I struggle with higher fees unless it's making a drastic difference. Like if we need it, like if we need to increase these fees, like that's one thing. But I mean, when we have like a sign permit that's going from $5 to $35, that it just seems like a lot to me. And I understand like the surrounding towns and other things, but you know, doubling all of our fees for, you know, the finished space, unfinished space, it seems to be doubling or tripling in our fees. Like, if we need to go up, can we do that a little more incrementally, or I don't know.
Honestly, these are lower than where I originally proposed. Like I said, it's still lower than most surrounding towns, significantly lower than the bigger towns. Holden is 60 cents a square foot for residential and 50 cents a square foot for commercial. Brewer and Belfast are similar to Holden. So I mean, these are, yes, they're an increase, but again, we haven't increased since the 90s. I mean, think about that. I mean, inflation. I mean,
can you explain the administrative appeal and the variance appeal to me?
Absolutely. Right now, if you come in and I can't issue you a permit because you don't meet the dimensional setback or something, and you apply for an appeal, I schedule a meeting with the appeals board, and I have to advertise that in the paper, which typically runs about $64 to run an ad in the Enterprise. And I have to send out abutter notices, which, depending on the property and how many abutters there are, that's 58 cents per letter being sent out. So $100 would about cover that. Right now, we don't charge any fee. And so when there's an appeal, we're basically spending town money, and it's for their benefit. So I feel like a small fee to cover the costs is reasonable. But the business registration one is one that Jake mentioned. State law says that it has to be $10, and we've only been charging $5. The sign permit, 90% of the sign permits that I issue are to corporations like Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, Family Dollar, Hannaford. And when the corporate office calls and says they wanna send a check in to cover the cost of the sign permits, and I tell them it's $5, they kinda chuckle, like, is it even worth our time to send a check? $35 is the average of the communities around here. It's $100 in Brewer. So that's where I came up with that number.
Yep. Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Where does this money go? When they pay for this permit, where does that money go?
That was the question.
It's a revenue offset. When we do our budget, we budget estimated revenue for the amount of revenue taken in for code, for building permits, code related things, for plumbing permits, and those revenue offsets reduce the amount of property taxes that have to be raised in order to support the budget for these various accounts. And I think we budget at the current rates, we budget about $15,000 for code and for the building permit code enforcement, and 6 or 7, I can't remember off the top of my head, for the plumbing permit fees that are associated, and then town clerk fees, which include some of the business licensing and those kind of things, as well as other fees, is I think 7,000. But all of those revenues that we take in act as offsets to the amount of property tax that has to be raised.
So there's a number for that in the budget.
Yes.
So if I look in the budget, I'll find a number that says
A
how much.
revenue number, yes.
Okay. All right.
And for what it's worth, I mean, I haven't gone back significantly, but the last couple of years, I've hit the target number in the budget for income when it comes to plumbing and septic permits, but I have come significantly lower than the estimated number in the building permits. And we've been busy these last few years, but we're not hitting the budget number. I think partly, I think the budget went up when we thought Will Oceans was gonna build, and then they haven't pulled their permits, and so we haven't hit that number. But I think that's part of it. So, and that's another one where the commercial rate, I bumped it from 10 cents a square foot where it is currently to 25 because of things like Whole Oceans, where they're coming in and for a couple $100 they're getting their building permits and they're building multi-million-dollar projects, and it's kind of silly.
I remember the conversation.
Yeah.
The level of review for commercial projects is significantly higher. In staff time and other things than residential permitting, generally speaking.
I guess I understand a little bit more of the commercial piece. You know, like, and I understand where you're coming from and what you're saying. I don't know why. It doesn't sit like people are paying a huge amount right now to build a deck. Not from necessarily the town, it's not a huge amount, but they're paying a huge amount, but then they gotta come and they have to pay more for us to say, yes, you can do this.
95% of decks fall under the minimum permit fee because they aren't enough square footage to even add up to above that.
That's, I mean, just my example.
So typically a deck or a shed is the $25, which I'm proposing we change to $35.
Yeah.
But $35, so that would be under the current rate, I mean that's 350 square foot deck. That's a pretty good sized deck. Anyway, we haven't got a lot of time, so I'll keep going. Marijuana establishment license. This one, I looked at pretty much every town that allows marijuana and stuff, and most of them have rates varying from $500 to thousands and thousands. And most of them vary the rate based on, like medical marijuana might be lower than recreational, and a processing facility might be 1,500, and then a cultivation facility might be 400 for a 2,000 square foot, and then it goes up for each tier, and I just felt like that was all a lot of extra to keep track of and stuff. I thought it would be simpler if it was just a flat fee for any marijuana establishment.
You mean in all the categories?
Yeah. I mean, it's just what I'm proposing. We can certainly talk about having larger fees for larger tiers, but what we proposed was $500 annually.
You're saying that the town will issue a license to them, $500 annually?
Annually, yeah.
Okay.
So I did talk with Jordan
Mhm.
About that. He had asked me not to go too crazy because he said some towns are trying to charge, think it's a golden egg. So I told him I was thinking about $500. He didn't seem too opposed to that. But I mean, obviously they'd love for it to be zero. But I do think that it's a significant amount of monitoring and inspections and
Luke, if that's consistent, that's on the low end of what's being charged
across the state. Yeah.
across the state.
And on that same page, Jake worked with me on the licensing for the dining and innkeeper and stuff, and we felt that we were significantly low compared to other towns. We don't even charge a fee for a liquor license, which is, you go to Bangor and get a liquor license and it's going to cost you big bucks. And we weren't charging anything, so we're proposing at least a $200 fee initially, and then $100 to renew annually, and then
That's for a liquor license?
liquor license.
200 annually?
200 initially and 100 annually is what we're proposing, but we're open to your thoughts. That's what we're here for.
I'm a little too close to the subject to say too much.
You okay if I speak?
Yes.
On the committee. Okay, the only thing I would add here is I share Councilor Rosby's concerns. But what I would say, Luke, is I think this is a good representation of going through these line by line and saying there's a responsibility on the part of whomever the entity is that's looking to do this, to pick up a portion of that. And there's also the responsibility, for example, of the town to also pick up the town has a vested interest in making sure that businesses are open, et cetera, et cetera. But that's how I see it. If you're going to build something and you're paying $20 per square foot for the license fee, and that's picking up a portion of your expense when it comes to doing the inspections, and the town is picking up the rest of that, then
That's not $20.
20.
oh, sorry, 20 cents. 20 cents. Yes, sorry. Yeah, thank you for correcting me because that would have been the headline. No, 20 cents per square foot. Right. That to me is, I think, should be the goal. That's my 0.2 cents. But yeah, but I can see, we don't want to be punitive with fees for sure.
Yeah.
We're at 655.
So okay, go ahead.
In the end, who will be approving different ones that come into town to want to open marijuana establishments?
Marijuana
in their town?
specifically, well, it would have to go through the planning board initially, and the planning board would have to approve their plan, and so depending on the facility, if it's got odor control plans and all that type of stuff, we're going to be looking at all of that. We're going to be looking at their security plans. And then if the planning board approves it, then ultimately I would issue the license. So,
Okay.
and they'll have to present the proof of state licenses and all that stuff.
So with this, because we got to wrap up, I guess my thought and my opinion on this is that I think we keep the residential permits and the square footage the same as it is, minus adding to can you explain the unfinished space?
Yep, so if you have a cape and you
Yep.
haven't got the upstairs finished, it's just open space.
Yep.
Or if you have a full basement and you've got your workshop and stuff down there, but it's not sheet rock and
Yep.
and all that, so that will be unfinished space.
Okay. I mean, if we don't have anything there currently, then, adding to that, and make it, like the accessory structures, or, like the accessory, so like the 5 cents per square feet, and I guess for me, I feel that we keep those where they are. I'm okay with the marijuana establishments license. I think that makes sense with what you said with the oversight and the things that we have to do with that, but can we make a few adjustments to the residential? And I don't know, Jim, how you feel about that, but
I guess, your reasoning for upping these was that you have more legwork to do, more times out there, more this and that. Yet this money, is this money slated for your pay? Does it pay part of his pay or something, or?
It shows as an offset, as a revenue under code enforcement, which is the way ambulance offsets the fire department. Those revenues, they all go into a big pot, but when we break them down to see the actual tax cost of a department, we apply the revenues against that are generated by that department, so that you have a better idea of what the total tax cost is.
Okay.
If you were asking if I get any of it, no, I don't. It goes to the general fund.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we need to wrap it
Okay.
up.
All right, so do we need anything, so will
There-
you,
It's only first reading tonight,
Yeah.
and then
okay,
public hearing, so there's plenty of opportunity for
okay.
additional change.
Motion to adjourn?
Second, all in favor?
Look at that.